So in this video, instead of going step by step through the process of creating this particular script, I'm just gonna cover a little bit about what these different inputs and parameters are doing for the model. So right now, the preview for everything is on. So we're just seeing a kind of overlap of all the different steps in here. What I'm going to do is select all of them and then turn the preview off for all of them. And then I just want to look at the final one. So this is the sort of outcome of this particular script. Okay, so first of all, what we have here in terms of the geometry that we're working with. So probably when you start to build this, you want to begin with establishing the geometry. So we have a box, a rectangular box. There's an XY component for basically this sort of point of origin. Okay, so you can see as I slide the X here, let me rotate a little bit around so you are oriented a little bit better. X is this red axis, the green is the Y, so I can shift it along those if I wanted to. And we also have, relative to that point, a Y size and an X size. So that's this right here, 3 by 3. So if I was to increase those, you'll see that the proportions of the box are changing. Okay, so that's the first part. I'd suggest building it from the box first, get that set. Now, there's two transformations that are happening here. One is a move. So in other words, we start with this original box and then we make a move. Basically it's 1 unit or 1 height of the box up. And the second transformation is a rotation. Now, if left alone, those two transformations will produce 1 copy that's moved and 1 copy that's rotated. But we want to have this kind of series of slow transformations. And so that's why we have added this series parameter here. So there's 1 that's associated with the move, and there's 1 that's associated with this rotation. Okay, so these are the 2 transformations: move, rotate. Okay, I suppose it could be in either order, but the first transformation in this script is the move, and then the second one is the rotate. Now, maybe something that we haven't done too much of is using the same slider to define some input for 2 different aspects. So, for example, with the height of the box, I've got it set to 1, but it also is being used for the series, the step size for each successive number. So if I use the same number here, you can see that it's 2 units high, but it's also each step is 2 units. All right, so there's some advantage to that. If you wanted to have some kind of gap in between the boxes, basically you could use a separate slider for it instead of using the same number here. You could also use one of the math operators. For example, divide, which I'll talk about in just a second. So I'm going to bring it back down to 1 unit. The starting point of the series, do we, begin 1 unit up, 2 units up, etc. Kind of no reason to adjust that. It's kind of good to start at the 0, 0, 0 point down here. Okay, now the only thing that we are controlling with the move function is the movement along the z-axis. The x and y will remain fixed. Okay, and so that gets plugged into the translation vector. So again, you could, adjust the the move function, along the X or Y axis as well, but we want ours to be vertical. So this is plugging into the Z. Okay, now for the rotation, there's the geometry, which has been already set with the box and the move function. There is an angle of rotation, and there is a rotation plane. So basically, this rotation plane is establishing the axis of rotation. So I'm using, the definitions for the X and the Y. So basically we have a point. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this one and then turn the preview on. So you see there's a little X down here that has identified where that point is. Now, what maybe something we haven't done yet is to use one of the operators for division. So basically what I'm doing here is we have, as I mentioned before, the dimensions of the box are 3 units by 3 units. And I'm also using that same number to establish this point, basically. So what I've done is I've used this division. So it's using 3, okay? And it is taking that number and it is dividing it. This is B is the divisor, is dividing it by 2. So basically what I wanted to do is establish this axis right in the middle of the box. So for example, if I was to move this up to 4 and this to 4, now that point has shifted, so it's still centered because I'm using a divisor of 2. Now, if I was to take that and divide it by some other number, it's going to shift the axis of rotation relative to that point. So here I have a kind of an offset rotation. If I set it to 2, then it's going to be kind of aligned through the center of the whole stack. Okay, so that's the axis of rotation. And I'm also using a series to establish this kind of incremental rotation process. And here again, I'm using the same slider to control the series for the move and the series for the rotation. So that way, I don't have to make 2 inputs and adjust them. I could if I wanted to, and you could try that and see what the effect of that would be. But I want to keep them kind of in correlation or with association with each other. So the count for the series of the rotation and the count for the series of move is the same. Okay, now for the other inputs here, you can see what's happening is for this series, we're establishing the first number in the series. So, and this is going to be, there's my conversion from degrees to radians, which we've used before. So am I going to start out at 0 degrees, or is my first one going to be 10 degrees? Okay, so, obviously you could use a slider that went, to, 360 degrees. So that would just simply be a process of changing this to 360 and, sliding it accordingly. Okay, but I'm going to leave that at 0. All right, now the steps, again, this is all looking at the degrees for the rotation that are plugging into this angle here. So the steps are saying, okay, how many degrees is one step over the other? Okay, so that's what that's controlling. And I think I made the slider up to 90. I think if you get it to be too high, like you can see once we get into like here, it gets a little less legible. So perhaps the sort of, lesser steps kind of show the twist a little bit better. Anyway, this is the first part, and you basically want to set up the script as I have it, and then we'll look at some other possibilities next.